Have you ever wondered about the fascinating dynamics that shape families throughout history? Tonight, as you settle into your bedtime routine, let me share some captivating insights about how family patterns repeat across generations, creating an intricate web of inherited traits, behaviors, and destinies that might just help you drift off into peaceful slumber. Family structures have always been complex tapestries, woven with threads of genetics, environment, and circumstance. Consider how certain characteristics seem to flow like rivers through family lines, creating patterns that emerge generation after generation. These inherited traits aren't just physical features, like eye color or height, but can include personality quirks, talents, and even behavioral tendencies that create a unique family signature. The concept of generational influence runs deeper than most people realize. When we examine family trees, we often discover that certain professions, interests, or life choices appear repeatedly across different generations. A family might produce multiple musicians, teachers, or entrepreneurs, not just through conscious choice, but through a combination of genetic predisposition, shared values, and environmental factors that create natural pathways for similar expressions of human potential. Birth order plays a fascinating role in shaping family dynamics. Firstborn children often develop leadership qualities and feel responsibility for their younger siblings, while middle children frequently become skilled negotiators and peacekeepers. The youngest children in families tend to be more creative and risk-taking, having learned to find unique ways to capture attention and carve out their own identity within the family structure. Family traditions serve as invisible threads that bind generations together across time. These rituals, whether simple bedtime stories, holiday celebrations, or annual camping trips, create shared memories that become part of the family's collective identity. Even seemingly minor traditions like Sunday morning pancakes or evening walks can have profound psychological impacts, providing stability and continuity that children carry forward into their own families. The role of family nicknames reveals interesting patterns about relationships and hierarchies within family units. Often, these pet names originate from childhood moments or personality traits, but they can persist for decades, sometimes becoming more commonly used than actual given names. These linguistic markers create intimate bonds, while also establishing informal family roles and expectations. Consider the phenomenon of family talents that seem to skip generations. A grandparent's artistic ability might lay dormant in their children, only to resurface dramatically in grandchildren who never received formal training but somehow possess intuitive skills. This genetic memory suggests that our family heritage carries forward capabilities that can emerge unexpectedly, creating surprising connections across time. Family communication patterns often mirror broader cultural values and historical contexts. Some families maintain formal, hierarchical communication styles passed down from previous generations, while others adopt more casual, egalitarian approaches. These patterns influence how family members express emotions, resolve conflicts, and show affection, creating distinct family cultures that can persist for generations. The geographic movements of families create interesting stories of adaptation and change. When families migrate, whether across countries or just to different neighborhoods, they face decisions about which traditions to maintain and which to modify. This process of cultural negotiation often reveals the most essential elements of family identity as members unconsciously choose which practices are too important to abandon. Family financial attitudes demonstrate remarkable consistency across generations. Families that experienced economic hardship often pass down frugal spending habits and strong work ethics, while families with consistent prosperity might emphasize different values around money and success. These economic philosophies become embedded in family culture, influencing career choices and life priorities for decades. The evolution of family roles over time reflects broader social changes while maintaining certain consistent patterns. Traditional gender roles within families have shifted significantly, yet many families still maintain informal divisions of labor and responsibility that echo historical patterns. Understanding these shifts helps us appreciate how families serve as bridges between past and present social norms. Family conflict resolution styles often become inherited patterns that influence how future generations handle disagreements. Some families emphasize direct confrontation and heated discussion, believing that airing grievances leads to stronger relationships. Others prioritize harmony and indirect communication, viewing conflict as something to be minimized rather than engaged. These approaches shape children's expectations about relationships throughout their lives. The role of family storytelling in preserving history cannot be overstated. Every family has its collection of stories about ancestors, significant events, and character-defining moments. These narratives serve multiple purposes. They preserve important information, reinforce family values, and create a sense of belonging to something larger than individual experience. The way these stories are told and retold shapes family identity. Family eating habits and food traditions reveal deep cultural connections and emotional bonds. Certain recipes become treasured family heirlooms, passed down with specific techniques and accompanying stories. The social dynamics around family meals, from formal dining protocols to casual kitchen conversations, establish patterns of gathering and sharing that influence social skills and relationship expectations. Educational values within families create powerful legacies that influence multiple generations. Some families prioritize formal academic achievement, creating environments where intellectual curiosity and scholarly success are highly valued. Others emphasize practical skills and hands-on learning, believing that real-world experience provides the best education. These educational philosophies shape career paths and life choices across generations. Family attitudes toward risk and adventure demonstrate interesting patterns of inheritance and rebellion. Conservative families might produce generations of careful planners and cautious decision-makers, while more adventurous families encourage risk-taking and exploration. Sometimes these patterns reverse, with risk-averse parents producing adventurous children as a form of generational rebellion or balance. The concept of family loyalty manifests in various ways across different family structures. Some families maintain strong expectations of mutual support and collective decision-making, while others prioritize individual autonomy and self-reliance. These loyalty patterns influence everything from career choices to marriage decisions, as family members navigate between personal desires and family expectations. Family creative expressions often create unexpected connections across generations. A love of music, visual arts, writing, or craftsmanship can emerge in various family members, sometimes connecting distant relatives who share artistic sensibilities. These creative threads create special bonds and often become sources of family pride and identity. The role of family pets in shaping household dynamics deserves special attention. Animals often become integral family members, teaching children about responsibility, empathy, and loss. The way families choose, care for, and remember their pets reveals important values about nurturing, commitment, and the circle of life. Family travel patterns and attitudes toward exploration influence worldview development across generations. Some families prioritize exposure to different cultures and experiences, believing that travel broadens perspective and builds character. Others focus on deep connections to local communities and familiar environments, emphasizing the importance of roots and stability. The management of family secrets and sensitive information creates complex dynamics that can influence relationships for generations. How families handle difficult topics like addiction, mental health issues, financial problems, or relationship conflicts establishes patterns of openness or secrecy that affect trust and communication across multiple generations. Family celebration styles reflect deeper values about community, tradition, and joy. Some families create elaborate celebrations for birthdays, holidays, and achievements, believing that marking special occasions strengthens bonds and creates positive memories. Others prefer quiet, intimate acknowledgments, focusing on personal meaning rather than external display. The role of extended family members like grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins in providing alternative perspectives and relationships cannot be overlooked. These connections often provide children with different models of adult behavior and alternative sources of support, enriching the family experience and providing backup systems during difficult times. Family decision-making processes reveal important patterns about authority, consensus building, and individual voice within family structures. Some families operate as democracies, where everyone's opinion carries weight, while others maintain hierarchical structures where certain members hold more influence. These patterns shape children's expectations about leadership and participation in other social contexts. The preservation and sharing of family photographs and mementos creates tangible connections to family history. The way families organize, display, and discuss these artifacts influences how younger generations understand their heritage and place within the family narrative. Digital technology has transformed these practices while maintaining their essential emotional functions. Family approaches to health and wellness often establish lifelong patterns that influence physical and mental well-being. Some families prioritize active lifestyles and preventive care, while others may have more reactive approaches to health issues. These attitudes toward physical maintenance and medical care create lasting influences on individual health choices. The way families handle transitions and major life changes reveals resilience patterns that can be passed down through generations. Some families thrive during periods of change, viewing challenges as opportunities for growth and adaptation. Others prefer stability and may struggle more with transitions, requiring additional support during periods of adjustment. Family gift-giving traditions and attitudes toward material possessions reflect deeper values about generosity, reciprocity, and the relationship between objects and emotions. Some families emphasize thoughtful, personalized gifts that demonstrate attention and care, while others focus on practical items or experiences rather than material objects. As we consider these intricate patterns that weave through family histories, we begin to understand that every family represents a unique experiment in human connection and development. The combinations of genetics, environment, choice, and circumstance create endless variations in how families function and evolve across time. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, perhaps reflect on the fascinating tapestry of your own family story. Consider the threads that connect you to previous generations and the new patterns you might be creating for future ones. Family dynamics continue to pattern strang up to one's own. Evolve, influenced by changing social norms, technological advances, and individual choices. Yet certain fundamental human needs for connection, belonging, and identity remain constant across all family structures. These complex family systems remind us that we are all part of something larger than ourselves, connected to both past and future through invisible bonds of shared experience, inherited traits, and chosen relationships. Understanding these patterns can help us appreciate the remarkable diversity of human family experience, while recognizing the common threads that unite all families in their fundamental mission of nurturing, protecting, and preparing the next generation for their own journey through life. Sweet dreams, and may your rest be filled with peaceful reflections on the beautiful complexity of family bonds that connect us all across time and space. Have you ever wondered what happens when your favorite animated characters don't just get blown up for laughs, but actually stay dead? Well, grab a cup of warm milk and get comfortable, because tonight we're diving deep into the surprisingly dark world of Family Guy's permanently deceased characters. And trust me, some of these deaths will shock you more than Peter's latest workplace accident. Now, before we start counting bodies, let's be real about something. Family Guy isn't exactly known for its restraint when it comes to cartoon violence. Characters get flattened, exploded, and dismembered on a weekly basis only to magically appear in the next scene like nothing happened. But every once in a while, the Grim Reaper actually keeps his receipts, and these characters never bounce back. Some were killed because fans couldn't stand them, others because their voice actors passed away in real life, and a few just got caught in the crossfire of Seth MacFarlane's twisted sense of humor. So dim those lights, settle into your most comfortable position, and let's explore every character that Family Guy has permanently sent to the great cartoon afterlife. Starting with the very first casualty that taught us this show wasn't messing around when it came to consequences. Our journey begins with Mr. Weed, Peter's original boss at the happy-go-lucky toy factory. This man first graced our screens way back in the pilot episode, catching Peter dead drunk at his workstation because apparently showing up sober was too much to ask. Mr. Weed was everything you'd expect from a factory supervisor dealing with Peter Griffin as an employee. Stern, professional, and probably questioning every career choice that led him to that moment. What made Mr. Weed fascinating wasn't just his no-nonsense attitude, but the running joke about his suspiciously theatrical mannerisms. The show never explicitly confirmed anything about his personal life, but his fabulous gestures and dramatic flair became a subtle recurring gag. Despite Peter's constant screw-ups, Mr. Weed kept giving him second chances, firing and rehiring him like it was some kind of workplace hobby. The irony is that this unusual loyalty to Peter ultimately sealed his fate. In the episode where everything went wrong, Peter decided to invite his boss over for dinner to make a good impression. Surprisingly, the evening started perfectly. Mr. Weed was genuinely impressed by Peter's home, family, and even Brian's ability to speak. He was so impressed that he offered Peter a promotion to head of toy development. That's when dinner took a deadly turn. Brian, shocked by this unexpected good news, started choking on a dinner roll. When Peter and Lois performed the Heimlich maneuver, the roll shot out of Brian's mouth like a projectile and landed directly in Mr. Weed's throat. And unlike the countless other times characters have faced mortal peril in this show, Mr. Weed actually died from choking. The funeral scene was classic Family Guy darkness. Mr. Weed left behind a videotaped will announcing that the happy-go-lucky toy factory would be demolished to make way for something called the homoerotic toy factory. It was absurd, tragic, and weirdly fitting for a character whose sexuality had been a running gag throughout his appearances. Moving from workplace fatalities to relationship drama, let's talk about Loretta Brown, Cleveland's ex-wife, who met her end in a way that perfectly summarized her entire character arc. Loretta was everything Cleveland wasn't. Where he was calm and soft-spoken, she was loud, demanding, and took no prisoners when it came to getting what she wanted. Their marriage started cracking when Quagmire's infamous inability to control himself led to an affair. During a fishing trip, a fish accidentally landed on Loretta's chest, and she took it as some kind of cosmic sign to sleep with the guy who caught it. Classic Family Guy logic, really. When Peter and Brian discovered this affair, they recognized Quagmire by his distinctive tattoo, leading to the most awkward revelation scene in television history. Cleveland's reaction to learning about the betrayal was so pathetically calm that it almost hurt to watch. Instead of rage or dramatic confrontation, he just apologized and accepted being kicked out of his own home. It wasn't until Peter and Lois called him out for being too passive that Cleveland finally found his spine and went after Quagmire. After their divorce was finalized, Loretta lived alone in a house on the hill, which sounds poetic until you remember this is Family Guy, and nothing stays peaceful for long. Her death came during one of Peter's elaborate pranks that somehow always managed to destroy Cleveland's property. This time, instead of Cleveland surviving the chaos like usual, Loretta got caught in the destruction and was crushed by falling debris. The reason behind Loretta's permanent exit was actually practical rather than narrative. Her voice actress, Alex Borstein, who also voices Lois, found Loretta's gravelly voice too difficult and painful to perform. Rather than recast the character, the writers decided to kill her off permanently, which honestly feels like the most Family Guy solution possible. Speaking of deaths that came out of nowhere, Horace's demise was particularly heartbreaking for fans of the Drunken Clam. This guy had been serving drinks to Peter, Quagmire, Joe, and Cleveland since the early seasons, surviving multiple near-death experiences that should have killed any normal bartender. He'd been shot, knocked unconscious, and even survived a fire, leading viewers to believe he was practically immortal. His luck finally ran out during a softball game between the Drunken Clam and Goldman's Pharmacy. Jerome, brought in as a ringer for Mort's team, was at bat when Horace tried to strike him out. Instead of a strikeout, Horace got struck down permanently. The episode revealed his death so casually that it almost felt cruel. But that's exactly the kind of dark humor Family Guy specializes in. The aftermath was even more devastating. The Drunken Clam was set to close permanently, which would have destroyed one of the show's most important locations. Peter tried everything to save the bar, but it was Jerome himself, the man who accidentally killed Horace, who stepped up to buy the establishment and keep it running. It was a surprisingly touching resolution to a tragic situation. Now let's talk about Peter's father, or at least the man he thought was his father for most of his life. Francis Griffin was the embodiment of strict Irish Catholic values, taken to an uncomfortable extreme. His dislike of Lois simply because she was Protestant created constant family tension, and his general disappointment in Peter was palpable in every scene they shared. When Francis retired and moved in with the Griffin family, he transformed their home into what looked like a Catholic gift shop explosion. Crucifixes appeared in every room. Religious imagery covered the walls, and the atmosphere became so oppressive that Peter actually convinced the Pope to visit and talk some sense into his father. The fact that Francis accused the Pope of going soft tells you everything you need to know about his personality. Francis met his end during Meg's birthday party, which was already going poorly because Peter was, as usual, being a complete embarrassment. While attempting one of his signature stupid stunts, Peter accidentally caused an accident that put Francis in the hospital. On his deathbed, Francis had some final words for his son that were both cruel and oddly accurate. He called Peter a fat, stinking drunk, which honestly wasn't wrong, but the timing made it particularly harsh. The revelation that Francis wasn't even Peter's biological father came during therapy sessions afterward. Peter discovered his real father was an Irishman named Mickey McFinnigan, who only accepted Peter after he proved himself in a drinking contest. It was a twisted validation of everything Francis had criticized about Peter's character. Peter's mother, Thelma Griffin, also received the permanent death treatment, though her passing was handled with less dramatic flair. She died of a stroke at the beginning of an episode that quickly shifted focus to Peter getting involved with an older woman, which was weird timing even by Family Guy standards. Thelma had always been a complex character, technically nicer than Francis, but carrying her own set of serious problems. She was a smoker, gambler, and alcoholic who had created several traumatic childhood memories for Peter through her neglectful and sometimes abusive behavior. Her habit of dropping bombshells on Peter whenever she visited made every appearance feel like an emotional landmine. The most shocking revelation came when Peter needed his birth certificate and discovered he wasn't born in America, but in Mexico. Thelma had gone there to terminate her pregnancy after learning Peter's real father was an Irish drunk, but changed her mind after giving birth and smuggled baby Peter back to the United States. She then married Francis to give Peter a father figure, creating the lie that lasted Peter's entire childhood. Moving into the realm of characters that almost nobody mourned, Doug's death was announced so casually that it felt like an afterthought. This preschool rival of Stewie's had been a thorn in the baby's side for multiple episodes, representing everything Stewie hated about other children his age. Their rivalry started over playground politics and escalated into full-scale warfare, complete with campaign strategies and political maneuvering when Doug ran unopposed for snack captain. Stewie's terror at the thought of Doug gaining any kind of political experience, even at the preschool level, led to some of the show's most absurd storylines involving toddler espionage and election fraud. The episode ended with Stewie wearing the snack captain hat and casually mentioning that Doug had died in a commuter plane crash that morning. The matter-of-fact delivery and complete lack of emotional response from anyone made it clear that Doug's death was meant to be darkly comedic rather than tragic. Fans were actually relieved to see the annoying character permanently removed from the show. Bertram's death was far more dramatic and tied into one of Family Guy's most science fiction-heavy storylines. As Stewie's artificially conceived half-brother, Bertram represented a legitimate threat to Stewie's intellectual supremacy and served as his most formidable opponent throughout multiple episodes. Their first encounter inside Peter's reproductive system established them as equals in terms of intelligence and ruthlessness. After forming a temporary alliance based on their mutual hatred of Lois, the two babies eventually turned on each other in a conflict that escalated beyond playground politics into actual warfare involving time travel and assassination attempts. Bertram's master plan involved traveling back in time to eliminate one of Stewie's ancestors, Leonardo da Vinci, thereby erasing Stewie from existence entirely. The fact that he actually succeeded in killing da Vinci showed just how dangerous and competent Bertram could be when properly motivated. However, Stewie proved to be the superior strategist by tracking Bertram down through time and ending their rivalry permanently. The execution scene, where Stewie asks Bertram about his favorite bottled water before killing him, demonstrated the cold calculation that made Stewie such a compelling character. Unlike Doug's casual disposal, Bertram's death felt earned through multiple episodes of build-up and character development. The double murder episode stands out as one of Family Guy's most ambitious attempts at sustained storytelling across a full episode length. The mystery dinner party format allowed the writers to eliminate multiple characters while providing entertainment value through the whodunit structure. Muriel Goldman's death during this episode felt particularly cruel because she had never been anything more than a background character who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. As Mort's wife, she was essentially a female version of his neurotic personality, which made their relationship believable but didn't give her much individual characterization. The revelation that she had been exchanging mysterious messages with James Woods created false suspense about her potential involvement in the murders, but she was ultimately just another victim caught up in someone else's revenge scheme. Her funeral scene showed how little impact she had made on the community, with even her husband and son seeming relatively unaffected by her death. Diane Simmons represented the episode's true villain and most shocking revelation. As Tom Tucker's longtime co-anchor, she had been a background presence for years without showing any signs of homicidal tendencies. Her transformation from professional newswoman to calculating murderer demonstrated how deeply personal rejections and professional disappointments could push someone over the edge. The motive behind her killing spree was painfully relatable in its pettiness. Being dumped by James Woods for a younger woman and facing replacement by a younger co-anchor as she turned 40 created the perfect storm of humiliation and desperation. Her methodical approach to framing Tom Tucker for the murders showed intelligence and planning that made her genuinely dangerous. Diane's final confrontation with Lois provided the classic villain monologue moment where all her motivations were revealed. The irony of being killed by Stewie, a baby, after successfully eliminating multiple adult targets added the kind of dark humor that Family Guy specialized in creating. Patty Tanager's death was perhaps the most satisfying for viewers who had endured his annoying catchphrase and constant attempts to start fights over nothing. This short, aggressive man represented everything irritating about people who create drama where none needs to exist. His role as the boss of a car dealership where Brian worked temporarily showed that his obnoxious personality wasn't limited to casual encounters. Even in professional settings, he couldn't resist making inappropriate comments and stirring up unnecessary conflict with his employees and customers. The poetic justice of his death came when he tried to start a fight with someone operating a military tank. His final words, maintaining his catchphrase even while facing certain doom, showed that he was committed to his obnoxious personality right until the end. The audience's reaction to his death was overwhelmingly positive, proving that sometimes characters are specifically designed to be eliminated. The deaths of Angela and Mayor Adam West carried more emotional weight because they were tied to the real-life passing of their voice actors. These weren't creative decisions made for storyline purposes, but necessary responses to losing the talented people who brought these characters to life. Angela's character arc, from hostile supervisor to lonely woman seeking connection, provided some of Peter's most uncomfortable workplace storylines. Her sexual harassment of Peter while threatening his job security created situations that were both comedically awkward and genuinely problematic by today's standards. Her backstory, revealing years of loneliness and isolation, made her desperate actions more understandable without excusing them. The resolution where Peter dresses up to take her on a fake date showed his capacity for kindness even when dealing with someone who had made his life difficult. Carrie Fisher's death in real life meant that Angela's character had to be written out permanently. The funeral scene in her honor served as both a farewell to the character and a tribute to the actress who had voiced her. Peter's mistake of ending up at the wrong funeral added typical Family Guy humor to what was otherwise a genuinely touching moment. Mayor Adam West's death marked the end of one of the show's most beloved recurring characters. His wonderfully insane personality and possibly corrupt political practices had provided countless moments of absurd humor throughout his long tenure as Quahog's mayor. The real Adam West's connection to his animated counterpart made the character feel more authentic and grounded despite his completely unrealistic behavior and dialogue. His brief challenge from Lois during her political phase showed that even incompetent leadership was preferable to the corruption that inevitably followed. His marriage to Carol Pewterschmidt, Lois's sister, created additional family connections that made his death more personally impactful for the main characters. The tribute episode where Brian petitioned to rename the high school after Mayor West provided proper closure for a character who had been part of the show's fabric for over 16 seasons. The ghost appearance at the end where Mayor West saves Brian from falling off a cliff gave the character one final moment of heroism and showed that death couldn't completely remove him from the Family Guy universe. His replacement by Wild West as mayor acknowledged that the character was irreplaceable while allowing the show to continue. These permanent deaths in Family Guy serve multiple purposes beyond simple shock value. They demonstrate that actions can have genuine consequences, even in a cartoon universe known for its resurrection-running gags. Some characters were eliminated because they had served their narrative purpose, others because fan reaction made their continued presence counterproductive, and some because real-world circumstances forced the writers' hands. The variety in how these deaths were handled shows the range of Family Guy's storytelling capabilities. From casual mentions that treat death as an afterthought to elaborate murder mystery episodes that build tension across an entire episode, the show has found multiple ways to permanently remove characters while maintaining its signature dark humor. The emotional impact of these deaths varies significantly based on character development and audience attachment. Long-running characters like Mayor West and Horace created genuine sadness among fans, while annoying characters like Doug and Patty Tanager were celebrated in their passing. This range of reactions demonstrates how effectively the show had developed distinct personalities for even its minor recurring characters. What makes these permanent deaths particularly interesting is how they contrast with Family Guy's usual approach to cartoon violence. The show regularly features deaths that are immediately reversed or ignored, making the permanent ones stand out as genuinely significant events. When a character stays dead in this universe, it carries extra weight, because viewers know it's not the norm. The practical reasons behind some of these deaths, such as voice actor availability or fan reaction, show how external factors can influence creative decisions in long-running animated series. The writers have generally handled these necessary eliminations with appropriate respect while maintaining the show's comedic tone. Looking back at this collection of permanently deceased characters reveals the evolution of Family Guy's storytelling over its many seasons. Earlier deaths, like Mr. Weed, were often accidental consequences of the show's chaotic humor, while later deaths, like those in the murder mystery episode, showed more deliberate narrative planning. The show's willingness to permanently eliminate characters demonstrates confidence in its ability to create new sources of humor and conflict without relying on the same recurring personalities indefinitely. This creative flexibility has helped Family Guy maintain freshness across its extended run, while still honoring the contributions of departed characters. These deaths also serve as reminders that even in the most outrageous fictional universes, some actions cannot be undone. They provide moments of genuine consequence in a show that otherwise operates on cartoon logic, where nothing permanent ever happens to the main characters. So there you have it, fellow Insomniacs and Family Guy enthusiasts. A complete tour through the surprisingly extensive graveyard of characters who didn't make it back from their final Family Guy appearances. From workplace accidents to murder mysteries, from natural causes to tank-related incidents, the show has found creative ways to permanently remove characters while maintaining its signature blend of dark humor and unexpected heart. Sweet dreams, and remember, in the world of Family Guy, even cartoon death can sometimes be permanent. Have you ever wondered what makes Family Guy the perfect show to fall asleep to? Tonight, we're diving deep into the wonderfully weird world of Quahog to uncover some fascinating facts that might just help you understand why millions of people drift off to this animated chaos every single night. But first, let me ask you something. What if I told you that the baby genius who plots world domination actually has one of the most tragic character arcs in television history? Or that there's a scientific reason why Peter Griffin's voice might be the ultimate sleep aid? Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll never look at your bedtime Family Guy marathon the same way again. Let's start with something that'll blow your mind. Stewie Griffin, that diabolical infant with the posh British accent, wasn't always the character we know today. In the original concept, he was supposed to be much darker and more sinister. The show's creator, Seth MacFarlane, initially envisioned him as a genuinely evil character whose plans would occasionally succeed. But here's the fascinating part that most fans don't realize. Stewie's entire personality is built on a foundation of insecurity and loneliness that makes him oddly relatable, especially during those late-night viewing sessions when you're feeling a bit isolated yourself. The genius baby's accent tells us everything we need to know about human psychology. In one of the show's most revealing moments, Stewie admits in therapy that his British accent is completely fake. He adopted it to sound smarter and more sophisticated than everyone around him. It's essentially vocal armor designed to protect his vulnerable core. This resonates with so many viewers because we all put on masks to hide our insecurities. When you're lying in bed at 3 in the morning, there's something comforting about a character who's also struggling with authenticity. But here's where it gets really interesting. The show deliberately keeps it ambiguous whether other characters can actually understand Stewie. Sometimes they respond to him. Sometimes they completely ignore his elaborate monologues about world domination. This creates a dreamlike quality that perfectly mirrors the state between waking and sleeping. Your brain doesn't have to work too hard to follow rigid logic because the show itself operates on dream logic. Speaking of dream logic, let's talk about the show's relationship with time and reality. Family Guy is famous for its cutaway gags that transport viewers to completely different scenarios mid-episode. One moment Peter is arguing with Lois about dinner. The next moment we're watching a historical flashback about Napoleon's bathroom habits. These rapid shifts in context actually mimic the way our minds work when we're falling asleep, jumping from thought to thought without linear connection. The show's approach to continuity is another sleep-inducing factor. Characters die and come back to life, major events get completely forgotten by the next episode, and the family somehow never ages despite running for over 2 decades. This lack of consequences creates a safe space for your mind. You don't need to worry about emotional investment or following complex storylines. It's mental comfort food. Now let's examine the voice acting, because this is where the science gets really interesting. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple main characters, including Peter, Brian, and Stewie. The consistency of hearing the same vocal patterns creates a subconscious sense of familiarity and safety. Peter's voice in particular has a rhythmic, almost hypnotic quality that many sleep specialists would recognize as naturally soothing. The slight nasal tone and steady pacing can actually help regulate breathing patterns. Brian Griffin represents something unique in the Family Guy universe. As the talking dog who serves as the show's voice of reason, he often delivers philosophical observations and cultural commentary. But here's what makes him perfect for sleep viewing. His conversations with Stewie frequently dive into existential topics without becoming too heavy or anxiety-provoking. They discuss the meaning of life, mortality, and purpose in ways that feel profound but never overwhelming. It's like having a gentle philosophical discussion as you drift off to sleep. The show's approach to controversial topics is surprisingly sophisticated when you analyze it from a sleep psychology perspective. While Family Guy is known for pushing boundaries, it does so in such an over-the-top way that it becomes almost cartoonish rather than genuinely disturbing. This allows viewers to process difficult subjects without the emotional intensity that would keep them awake. It's social commentary wrapped in enough absurdity to feel safe. Let's dive into the Griffin family dynamics, because they reveal something fascinating about comfort viewing. Despite all their dysfunction, the family always comes back together by the end of each episode. Peter might do something incredibly stupid. Lois might lose her temper. Meg might face another humiliation. But they remain a unit. This predictable structure provides emotional security. No matter how chaotic things get, you know everything will essentially reset by the next episode. The show's treatment of Meg Griffin deserves special attention. As the perpetually misunderstood teenager who faces constant rejection and ridicule, she represents the part of ourselves we're most insecure about. But the show's portrayal of her suffering is so exaggerated that it becomes therapeutic rather than depressing. It's like having your own adolescent anxieties reflected back to you in such an extreme way that they lose their power to hurt you. Chris Griffin, the dim-witted but kind-hearted son, provides another layer of comfort. His innocence and genuine sweetness create moments of unexpected warmth throughout the show. When everything else is cynical and sarcastic, Chris offers glimpses of pure, uncomplicated emotion. These moments work like pressure valves, releasing tension just when the cynicism might become overwhelming. The show's relationship with pop culture creates a unique viewing experience that's perfect for repeat watching. The references span decades, from obscure 70s television shows to current internet memes. This means different jokes land differently depending on your age, mood, and current knowledge base. You can watch the same episode multiple times and discover new layers, but the discovery process is gentle and rewarding rather than demanding. Family Guy's animation style contributes to its sleep-friendliness in subtle but important ways. The character designs are simple and rounded, avoiding sharp angles or jarring visual elements that might startle viewers. The color palette is warm and familiar, dominated by the cozy yellows and browns of the Griffin home. Even during action sequences or fantastical cutaways, the visual style remains consistent and non-threatening. The show's musical elements deserve recognition too. From Stewie and Brian's elaborate musical numbers to Peter's improvised songs, music is woven throughout the series in ways that create rhythm and flow. These musical interludes often serve as natural breaking points, giving your brain permission to zone out or drift away. The songs are catchy enough to be memorable, but rarely complex enough to demand active listening. One of the most brilliant aspects of Family Guy's sleep appeal is its relationship with repetition. The show has been running for so long that certain gags and character interactions have become ritualistic. Peter fighting the giant chicken, Stewie's elaborate revenge plots against Lois, Brian's pretentious literary aspirations. These recurring elements create a sense of familiarity that can be deeply comforting for regular viewers. The show's approach to violence is another key factor. While there's plenty of cartoon violence, it's always presented in such an unrealistic way that it never feels genuinely threatening. Characters get blown up, shot, crushed, and dismembered, only to appear completely fine in the next scene. This consequence-free violence allows viewers to experience excitement and tension without any lasting anxiety. Let's talk about the show's treatment of mortality, because this might be the most important element for sleep viewing. Death appears frequently in Family Guy, but it's always treated as either temporary or comedic rather than genuinely tragic. Characters die and return, discuss death casually, and face mortal peril without real consequences. For viewers dealing with their own mortality anxieties, especially late at night, this approach can be surprisingly therapeutic. The writing style of Family Guy creates a unique rhythm that mirrors natural sleep patterns. Episodes often start with high-energy scenarios that gradually wind down through various subplots and cutaways. By the time you reach the resolution, the pacing has naturally slowed, making it easier to transition into actual sleep. It's like the show is designed to help you power down. Family Guy's relationship with nostalgia is complex and comforting. The show constantly references and parodies elements from decades past, creating a sense of collective cultural memory. Whether it's a reference to an 80s movie, a 70s television show, or a 90s commercial, these callbacks create connections to simpler times. For many viewers, this nostalgic element provides emotional comfort that eases the transition to sleep. The show's approach to relationships and romance offers another layer of sleep-friendly content. Despite all the dysfunction and crude humor, there are genuine moments of love and connection between characters. Peter and Lois, despite their constant conflicts, clearly love each other. Stewie and Brian, despite their differences, have formed an everyday, unlikely but deep friendship. These relationship dynamics provide emotional warmth without demanding too much investment. Here's something most people don't realize about Family Guy's structure. The show operates on multiple levels of engagement. You can watch it as pure background noise, letting the familiar voices and music wash over you. You can engage with the surface-level humor and sight gags. Or you can dive deep into the cultural references and character development. This flexibility makes it perfect for different stages of falling asleep. The show's treatment of everyday situations is particularly sleep-friendly. Many episodes revolve around mundane domestic issues like household chores, neighbor disputes, or family dinners that somehow spiral into elaborate adventures. But no matter how wild things get, they always return to the familiar setting of the Griffin home. This creates a sense of adventure within safety, excitement within security. Family Guy's approach to current events and social issues provides another comfort layer. The show comments on politics, social trends, and cultural phenomena, but always through the lens of cartoon absurdity. This allows viewers to engage with real-world concerns without the anxiety that usually accompanies such topics. It's like having a pressure release valve for contemporary stress. The show's episodic nature means you never have to worry about missing crucial plot developments if you fall asleep mid-episode. While there are occasionally multi-part episodes or recurring storylines, the vast majority of episodes are self-contained. This removes the anxiety about keeping up with complex narratives and allows your mind to relax completely. As we wrap up this deep dive into why Family Guy has become the ultimate sleep companion for millions of viewers, remember that comfort viewing is a deeply personal experience. What works for one person might not work for another, but there's something undeniably special about a show that can make you laugh, think, and ultimately feel at peace, all within the span of 22 minutes. The genius of Family Guy as a sleep aid lies in its perfect balance of engagement and relaxation. It's stimulating enough to occupy your conscious mind and prevent anxious thoughts from taking over, but familiar and comforting enough to allow your subconscious to begin the journey towards sleep. Whether you're drawn to Stewie's elaborate schemes, Peter's childlike wonder, or Brian's philosophical musings, there's something in this animated chaos for everyone. So the next time you find yourself reaching for that remote at bedtime, remember that you're not just choosing mindless entertainment. You're selecting a carefully crafted comfort blanket that's helped millions of people transition from the stresses of the day into peaceful rest. Sweet dreams, and remember, in Quahog, everything always works out in the end. Have you ever wondered why millions of people fall asleep to Family Guy every single night? Tonight, I'm diving deep into this bizarre internet phenomenon that's taken over bedrooms worldwide. We're talking about random Family Guy episodes specifically curated for sleep, and trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this animated chaos has become the ultimate sleep soundtrack for an entire generation. Before we jump into this rabbit hole, let me ask you something. How many of you have tried falling asleep to complete silence, only to find your brain racing with thoughts? Or maybe you've attempted those boring nature sounds that somehow make you feel more awake than relaxed. Well, you're not alone, and that's exactly where our story begins. The Family Guy sleep phenomenon isn't just some random internet trend. It's a psychological masterpiece that accidentally stumbled upon the perfect formula for shutting down an overactive mind. Think about it. When you're lying in bed, trying to fall asleep, what's your biggest enemy? Your own thoughts. Your brain wants to replay every embarrassing moment from middle school, plan tomorrow's meetings, or suddenly solve world hunger. But Family Guy? It gives your mind something familiar yet unpredictable to focus on, creating the perfect distraction cocktail. Let me paint you a picture of how this whole thing works. You're scrolling through YouTube at midnight, exhausted but somehow still wired. You stumble across a video titled Family Guy Random Episodes No Ads Perfect for Sleep, with like 3 million views. You click it, thinking you'll watch for maybe 10 minutes. Next thing you know, you're waking up 8 hours later with your phone battery dead and Peter Griffin's voice somehow embedded in your dreams. The genius of Family Guy as sleep content lies in its complete unpredictability, wrapped in comfortable familiarity. You've probably seen most episodes before, so there's no pressure to follow. Along with complex plot lines, your brain can just drift along with the familiar voices and random cutaway gags without feeling like it's missing something important. It's like having background conversation at a party where you don't need to participate, but the noise keeps your mind occupied enough to relax. Now, let's talk about why random episodes work better than watching the show normally. When you're actively watching Family Guy during the day, you're engaged with the jokes, the storylines, and the visual gags. But when it's sleep time, you need something that provides just enough stimulation to quiet your thoughts without keeping you awake. Random episodes create this perfect sweet spot because there's no narrative continuity to follow. Your brain doesn't have to work to connect plot points or remember character developments. It can just float along with whatever chaos is happening on screen. The audio quality of these sleep compilations is crucial too. Most creators who make Family Guy sleep content understand that the volume needs to be just right. Not so loud that sudden outbursts wake you up, but not so quiet that you're straining to hear. They often remove the louder musical segments and focus on dialogue-heavy scenes. It's like they've accidentally created the perfect white noise machine, except instead of ocean sounds, it's Stewie plotting world domination. Here's something fascinating about the psychology behind this phenomenon. Sleep researchers have found that consistent, familiar sounds can actually improve sleep quality by masking disruptive noises and giving the brain something predictable to tune out. Family Guy provides this consistency through its familiar character voices and recurring joke structures, while the randomness prevents your brain from getting too invested in following along. The comment sections on these videos are absolutely incredible. You'll find thousands of people sharing their sleep stories, talking about how they've been falling asleep to the same episodes for years, or how they can identify exactly which episode they fell asleep to based on what they remember hearing. There's this whole community of people who've basically turned Family Guy into their personal sleep medication, and they're all supporting each other's weird sleep habits. What's really interesting is how this has evolved beyond just Family Guy. You'll find similar content for shows like The Simpsons, South Park, and even The Office. But Family Guy seems to have the perfect storm of elements that make it ideal for sleep content. The show's humor doesn't rely heavily on visual gags, so you're not missing much with your eyes closed. The characters have distinct, recognizable voices that create a comforting audio landscape, and the show's episodic nature means you can jump in anywhere without feeling lost. The creators of these sleep compilations have become masters of their craft. They know exactly which episodes work best, which scenes to include or skip, and how to balance the audio levels for optimal sleep induction. Some even create custom transitions between episodes to eliminate jarring cuts that might wake viewers up. It's like they're running a sophisticated sleep laboratory, except their test subjects are millions of insomniacs scrolling YouTube at 2 in the morning. Let's dive into the science behind why this actually works. When you're trying to fall asleep, your brain goes through different stages of consciousness. During the transition from wakefulness to sleep, your mind is particularly susceptible to intrusive thoughts and anxiety. Having familiar, low-stakes audio content provides what sleep experts call cognitive load distribution. Essentially, you're giving your brain something harmless to process, instead of letting it spiral into worry or excitement. The repetitive nature of Family Guy's humor structure also plays a role. The show follows predictable patterns: setup, punchline, cutaway, gag, back to story. This rhythm becomes almost hypnotic when you're in a relaxed state. Your brain starts to anticipate these patterns, which can actually trigger the relaxation response and help transition you into deeper sleep stages. But here's where it gets really interesting. Many people report having the weirdest, most vivid dreams when they fall asleep to Family Guy. This makes sense from a neuroscience perspective. During REM sleep, your brain is still processing auditory information, and the random, surreal content from the show can influence your dream narratives. People describe dreams where they're hanging out with the Griffin family or experiencing bizarre adventures that feel like extended Family Guy cutaway gags. The social aspect of this phenomenon can't be ignored either. There's something comforting about knowing that thousands of other people are falling asleep to the same content. It creates this invisible community of shared experience. You're not alone in your weird sleep habits, because apparently everyone else is doing it too. The comment sections become these strange support groups where people bond over their favorite episodes to fall asleep to, or share stories about how the show has helped them through difficult times. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Is falling asleep to TV shows actually healthy? Sleep experts have mixed opinions on this. Some argue that any screen time before bed disrupts your natural circadian rhythms and that the blue light from devices interferes with melatonin production. Others acknowledge that for people with anxiety or racing thoughts, having consistent background audio can actually improve sleep quality compared to lying awake in silence for hours. The key seems to be in the execution. The most successful Family Guy sleep content creators understand the importance of audio-only engagement. They often recommend turning your phone face down or using the video purely as an audio source. Some even create audio-only versions specifically designed for sleep, removing any visual elements that might keep you engaged. What's particularly clever about the no-captions approach that many of these videos advertise is that it eliminates another potential distraction. Captions, while helpful for accessibility, can keep your eyes engaged and prevent that crucial transition into sleep mode. By removing them, creators ensure that once you close your eyes, you're purely in audio mode. The algorithm has definitely caught on to this trend. YouTube's recommendation system has become incredibly sophisticated at identifying sleep content and serving it to users who are likely to engage with it during late-night browsing sessions. This has created a whole ecosystem of sleep-focused content creators who specialize in curating the perfect bedtime entertainment. The timing of when people discover this content is usually pretty consistent. It typically happens during periods of high stress, major life changes, or when dealing with insomnia. College students preparing for finals, people going through breakups, individuals dealing with work stress, or anyone experiencing major life transitions often find themselves searching for ways to quiet their minds at bedtime. There's also something to be said about nostalgia playing a role in this phenomenon. Family Guy has been on the air for over 2 decades, which means many of the people using it for sleep content grew up with the show. There's a comfort in those familiar voices and jokes that connects to childhood feelings of safety and routine. It's like having a weird, inappropriate bedtime story that somehow works perfectly for adult anxieties. The production quality of these sleep compilations has evolved significantly over the years. Early versions were often just random episode uploads with inconsistent audio levels and jarring transitions. Now, you'll find carefully curated content with smooth transitions, optimized audio, levels, and strategic episode selection designed specifically for sleep enhancement. Some creators even remove the most jarring sound effects or explosive moments that might disrupt sleep. What's fascinating is how this has influenced the broader landscape of sleep content on YouTube. You'll now find entire channels dedicated to creating sleep-friendly versions of popular shows, and the techniques pioneered by Family Guy sleep content creators have been adopted across different types of media. The success of this format has proven that there's a massive audience for familiar, low-stakes entertainment designed specifically for bedtime consumption. The psychological comfort provided by these videos extends beyond just the audio content. Many users report that having the video running creates a sense of presence, like they're not alone in their bedroom. This can be particularly helpful for people who live alone or are dealing with anxiety about being by themselves at night. The familiar characters become like imaginary roommates, providing background chatter. As we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Family Guy sleep content, it's clear that this phenomenon represents something much bigger than just a weird internet trend. It's a collective solution to a modern problem that millions of people face every night. In our hyper-connected, always-on world, our brains often struggle to shut down when it's time for sleep. These carefully curated random episodes provide exactly what many people need: a familiar, comforting, and just engaging enough audio landscape to help transition from the chaos of daily life into peaceful sleep. Whether you're already part of this strange community or you're curious to try it for yourself, remember that good sleep hygiene is ultimately about finding what works for your individual needs. For millions of people, that apparently involves falling asleep to the dysfunctional antics of the Griffin family. And honestly, in a world full of sleeping problems, that seems perfectly reasonable to me. So tonight, when you're lying in bed with your mind racing, maybe give it a try. Search for Family Guy random episodes for sleep and see if this bizarre internet phenomenon might just be the solution to your bedtime struggles. Sweet dreams, and remember, if Peter Griffin can fall asleep anywhere, so can you. Hey there, sleep seekers and Family Guy fans. Ever lie awake wondering just how many ridiculous jobs Peter Griffin has actually had throughout the series? Well, grab your pillow and get comfortable, because we're about to dive into the wonderfully chaotic career history of Quahog's most incompetent resident. From safety inspector to Supreme Court justice, Peter's resume reads like a fever dream, and tonight we're exploring every single bizarre position this man has somehow managed to stumble into. Picture this. You're at a job interview, and they ask where you see yourself in 5 years. Most people have a reasonable answer. Peter Griffin? Well, let's just say his interview skills are about as polished as his decision-making abilities. Yet somehow, this man has held more jobs than most people even know exist. Tonight's journey through Peter's professional mishaps is perfect for those late-night moments when you need something absurdly entertaining to drift off to. Let's start with what might be considered Peter's most stable employment, though that's not saying much. His original gig as a safety inspector at the happy-go-lucky toy factory sounds straightforward enough. Stand around, inspect toys, make sure they're safe for children. Simple, right? Wrong. This is Peter Griffin we're talking about. Even the most basic task becomes an opportunity for spectacular failure. The man whose job it was to ensure toy safety somehow found ways to make everything less safe just by being there. From toy inspection, Peter moved on to what became his longest-running employment adventure, working at the Pawtucket Brewery. Now, there's something almost poetic about Peter working at the place where his beloved Pawtucket Patriot Ale is crafted. It's like a beer enthusiast getting a job at their favorite brewery, except instead of bringing passion and expertise to the role, Peter brought his unique talent for turning any situation into chaos. On his very first day, he managed to get drunk during work hours, setting the tone for what would become years of questionable workplace behavior. The medical field has also been graced by Peter's presence, though patients probably weren't thrilled about it. During a citywide flu outbreak, when the hospital was desperately short-staffed, Peter volunteered as a nurse. This might seem noble until you discover his approach to medical care. Turns out, Peter had been faking his way through nursing duties because he was afraid of needles. Imagine being sick in the hospital and finding out your nurse has been pretending to give you medication because he's squeamish about basic medical equipment. But Peter's medical career didn't end with nursing. He somehow also worked as a doctor, which raises serious questions about the hospital's hiring practices. His approach to emergency medicine was about as effective as you'd expect. When someone's life hung in the balance, Peter's solution involved methods that would make actual medical professionals question their career choices. Law enforcement has also experienced the Peter Griffin effect. In one memorable stint, he became a sheriff in a small southern town after the Griffin family was relocated by the FBI. The job description perfectly matched Peter's skill set: hang out, eat pie, and get drunk. For once, Peter had found employment that aligned with his natural abilities. Of course, even the simplest law enforcement duties became complicated when filtered through Peter's unique worldview. His artistic side emerged when he worked as a police sketch artist. While most people struggled with Peter's unconventional artistic interpretations, his sketches turned out to be surprisingly accurate. Sometimes, raw talent manifests in the most unexpected ways, even when that talent belongs to someone who approaches every task with the subtlety of a freight train. Peter has also dabbled in hospitality, working as a motel housekeeper. His customer service approach involved inserting himself into situations where he absolutely wasn't welcome, demonstrating a complete lack of understanding about personal boundaries and professional behavior. Guests probably didn't expect their housekeeper to become an active participant in their private moments. The detective business got a taste of Peter's investigative skills when he worked as a private investigator. His noir-style internal monologue painted him as a hard-boiled detective struggling to make ends meet, but his actual investigative methods were about as sophisticated as his approach to everything else. Still, there's something charming about Peter's attempt to channel classic detective fiction, even if the execution left much to be desired. Peter's relationship with food has led to several career opportunities. He became president of the National Association for the Advancement of Fat People, turning his personal struggles with weight into a leadership role. This position actually led to some heroic moments, proving that even Peter's most self-serving endeavors can occasionally produce positive outcomes. The fishing industry experienced Peter's unique management style when he decided to become a professional fisherman. Despite having zero experience on the water, Peter approached commercial fishing with his characteristic confidence. His nautical adventures proved that enthusiasm alone isn't enough to master the complexities of maritime work, especially when that enthusiasm is accompanied by a complete lack of relevant skills. Agriculture also felt Peter's impact when he tried his hand at farming. Moving the family to the countryside for a simpler life seemed like a reasonable plan until reality set in. Farming requires knowledge, patience, and hard work, qualities that don't align with Peter's approach to life. The fact that they failed to grow a single sellable crop shouldn't surprise anyone familiar with Peter's track record. Education has been both blessed and cursed by Peter's involvement. He served as an interim principal at James Woods High, stepping in during a staffing crisis. While his administrative methods were unconventional, he did manage some positive moments, like standing up to bullies. However, his interpretation of appropriate principal behavior included outdated social media challenges and questionable disciplinary approaches. Peter also won a campaign to become school board president, though his victory came through a smear campaign against his own wife. His tenure in educational leadership was marked by the same chaos that characterizes all his endeavors, proving that putting Peter in charge of anything, especially children's education, requires a level of optimism that borders on delusion. The restaurant business has provided Peter with multiple opportunities to combine his love of food with his entrepreneurial spirit. He and Lois opened Big Pete's House of Munch, using money from a valuable coin they discovered. Restaurant ownership taught Peter that loving food and successfully serving it to customers are entirely different skills. The establishment struggled from day one, with Peter's customer service philosophy clashing with basic business principles. Not content with traditional restaurants, Peter also operated a food truck called Eat My Junk. His mobile food service brought his unique culinary vision directly to the streets, complete with creative payment processing methods that probably violated several health and business regulations. The food truck experiment demonstrated that changing venues doesn't necessarily improve outcomes when the fundamental approach remains chaotic. Environmental activism became Peter's focus when he created Gary, the no-trash cougar, a character designed to combat pollution. His environmental education methods were somewhat traumatic for young audiences, proving that good intentions don't automatically translate to effective execution. Sometimes the message gets lost when the messenger approaches their mission with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Law enforcement experienced Peter's unique perspective again when he volunteered as a cop during a staffing shortage. Giving Peter police powers was probably one of Quahog's more questionable decisions. His interpretation of police work involved creative approaches to evidence handling and suspect interaction that would make actual officers reconsider their career choices. Corporate leadership has also been shaped by Peter's influence. When he temporarily took over as CEO of his father-in-law's company, his business philosophy involved firing experienced executives and replacing them with his drinking buddies. His product development ideas were equally revolutionary, though perhaps not in ways that traditional business schools would recommend. The tobacco industry briefly benefited from Peter's advocacy when he served as president of El Dorado Cigarette Company. His approach to corporate leadership in this role was refreshingly straightforward. Show up, sit in the office, and use his position to influence legislation. Sometimes the simplest job descriptions are the most honest. Political service has called upon Peter's talents multiple times. He worked as a press secretary, though his duties seemed to focus more on preventing static electricity than managing media relations. His understanding of political communication was about as nuanced as his approach to everything else, which is to say, not very nuanced at all. The entertainment industry has provided Peter with various opportunities to showcase his talents. He worked as a Calvin Klein model at some point in his past, proving that even Peter's physical appearance has commercial value under the right circumstances. He's also appeared in television commercials, though his performance skills might not lead to repeat bookings. Military service appears somewhere in Peter's background, though his understanding of combat protocols and chain of command was typically unconventional. His military training focused on identifying friendly forces, a concept he struggled to grasp despite repeated instruction. Telecommunications offered Peter work in telemarketing, though his target demographic was somewhat specialized. His phone skills were about as effective as you'd expect, with customer interaction following his usual pattern of creating confusion where none previously existed. Medical experimentation provided Peter with income opportunities when he volunteered for various research studies. The compensation was decent, though the side effects of participating in multiple experiments simultaneously probably weren't covered in the consent forms he definitely didn't read carefully. The hospitality industry experienced Peter's customer service philosophy when he worked various service positions. His approach to taking orders involved creative interpretations of restaurant terminology that probably confused both customers and kitchen staff. His ability to remember and accurately communicate simple requests was challenged by his tendency to overcomplicate straightforward interactions. Emergency services have been both helped and hindered by Peter's involvement. His stint as a firefighter demonstrated that good intentions and basic safety training don't always combine effectively. Sometimes the person meant to solve the problem becomes part of the problem, especially when that person approaches emergency response with Peter's unique logic. Entertainment production has benefited from Peter's creative vision. He developed television programming with the same innovative approach he brings to everything else. His understanding of audience preferences and production logistics was typically unconventional, resulting in content that probably challenged viewers' expectations in unexpected ways. Transportation services experienced Peter's customer service approach when he worked as an Uber driver. His vehicle, the situation was unconventional, and his interpersonal skills with passengers followed his established pattern of creating memorable experiences for all the wrong reasons. The pharmaceutical industry relied on Peter's expertise when he worked as a pharmacist. His approach to medication distribution and patient consultation demonstrated his unique interpretation of healthcare delivery. Customers probably received more than they bargained for in terms of personalized service. Seasonal employment has provided Peter with opportunities to spread joy as a mall Santa. His interaction with children during the holiday season showcased his gift for making lasting impressions, though not necessarily the kind that parents hope for when they bring their kids to meet Santa. Domestic management became Peter's responsibility when he worked as a house husband. His approach to household organization and family care demonstrated skills that had been hidden beneath years of workplace chaos. Sometimes the right job brings out unexpected competencies, even in the most unlikely candidates. Judicial service elevated Peter to the Supreme Court, where his legal philosophy focused on equality through unconventional means. His approach to constitutional interpretation was characteristically innovative, challenging traditional legal thinking with solutions that probably weren't covered in law school. Specialized services have utilized Peter's unique skill set in various capacities. He's worked as everything from a babysitter to a personal shopper, bringing his distinctive approach to customer service in roles that required sensitivity and attention to detail. His clients probably received more personalized attention than they anticipated. Performance arts have provided Peter with outlets for his creative expression. His musical abilities have earned him income through various venues, from street performance to wedding entertainment. His understanding of audience engagement and musical technique follows his established pattern of prioritizing enthusiasm over conventional skill. The food service industry has experienced Peter's influence in multiple capacities, from restaurant ownership to catering services. His culinary philosophy emphasizes creativity over convention, resulting in dining experiences that challenge customers' expectations about food preparation and presentation. Public safety has relied on Peter's expertise in various specialized roles, from ninja police officer to volunteer emergency responder. His approach to crime prevention and emergency management demonstrates innovative thinking that probably wasn't covered in standard training programs. Media production has benefited from Peter's creative vision in multiple formats, from cartoon development to television production. His understanding of entertainment value and audience engagement follows his characteristic approach of prioritizing memorable experiences over conventional quality standards. As we wrap up this extensive journey through Peter Griffin's career history, it's clear that his professional life has been anything but boring. From safety inspector to Supreme Court justice, from nurse to ninja cop, Peter has approached every job with the same combination of enthusiasm and chaos that defines his character. His work history reads like a collection of workplace disasters, yet somehow he keeps finding new employment opportunities. What makes Peter's career journey so entertaining is his complete lack of awareness about his own limitations. He approaches brain surgery with the same confidence he brings to flipping burgers, and somehow manages to create memorable moments in every position he holds. His employers probably don't forget him quickly, though not necessarily for the reasons they'd prefer. The sheer variety of Peter's employment history suggests either an incredibly diverse skill set or an amazing ability to convince people to hire him, despite obvious red flags. The truth is probably somewhere in between, though the evidence strongly suggests that Peter's interview skills don't accurately represent his job performance capabilities. Tonight, as you drift off to sleep, you can rest easy knowing that somewhere in the animated universe, Peter Griffin is probably starting a new job tomorrow, bringing his unique brand of workplace creativity to yet another unsuspecting industry. His career adventures remind us that sometimes the most entertaining stories come from the most unlikely sources, and that competence isn't always required for memorable employment experiences. Sweet dreams, and remember, no matter how chaotic your own work life gets, it's probably more manageable than Peter Griffin's professional journey through the working world of Quahog and beyond. Picture this. It's 2 a.m. You're tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep, Your mind is racing with thoughts about tomorrow's responsibilities, that awkward conversation from 3 weeks ago, and whether you left the stove on. What you need isn't another meditation app or white noise machine. You need something perfectly mundane, yet oddly fascinating. You need random Family Guy facts that will occupy just enough of your brain to let sleep creep in without being so exciting that they keep you awake. Tonight we're diving into the wonderfully weird world of Quahog, with facts so specific and delightfully pointless that they'll have you drifting off faster than Peter Griffin at a feminist poetry reading. Let's start with something that sounds completely made up but is absolutely real. The chicken fights between Peter Griffin and Ernie the Giant Chicken have collectively lasted over 20 minutes of screen time across all episodes. 20 minutes. That's longer than most sitcom episodes dedicate to their main plot. These epic battles began over something so ridiculously petty that it perfectly encapsulates the show's absurdist humor. An expired coupon. Not a life-changing amount of money, not a family heirloom, but a piece of paper that saves you maybe 50 cents on chicken feed. Yet this trivial dispute has spawned some of the most elaborate and destructive fight sequences in television history. The creators didn't plan for these fights to become a recurring element. The first chicken fight was supposed to be a one-off gag, but audience response was so positive that it became a signature element of the show. Each subsequent battle had to top the previous one in terms of scope and destruction. They've fought in the streets, crashed through buildings, battled in the sky, and even taken their conflict underwater. The animators spend weeks choreographing these sequences, treating them with the same attention to detail that major studios reserve for blockbuster action films. Here's something that might surprise you about the show's production process. Every episode of Family Guy requires approximately 15,000 individual drawings. In the digital age, this seems almost quaint, but the show maintains a hand-drawn aesthetic that demands incredible attention to detail. Each character's movement, each facial expression, each background element starts as a pencil sketch. The animators have developed shortcuts and techniques over the years, but the fundamental process remains surprisingly labor-intensive. The voice actors record their lines before any animation begins, which means the animators have to match the drawings to the vocal performances rather than the other way around. This creates some interesting challenges. Seth MacFarlane voices multiple characters, and he often has conversations with himself during recording sessions. The sound engineers have become experts at seamlessly blending these multi-character performances, creating the illusion that Peter, Brian, and Stewie are actually in the same room talking to each other. Speaking of voices, here's a fact that demonstrates just how integral Seth MacFarlane is to the show's DNA. He voices 4 main characters, plus dozens of recurring characters and one-off personalities. When he temporarily stepped back from the show to focus on other projects, the producers seriously considered ending Family Guy rather than recasting his roles. They eventually found ways to work around his reduced availability, but it highlighted how deeply connected the show is to MacFarlane's specific vocal talents and comedic sensibilities. The show's relationship with censorship has produced some genuinely bizarre situations over the years. There are jokes that were cut from the television broadcast but restored for DVD releases, creating alternate versions of episodes that exist in different formats. Some episodes have different running times, depending on where and how you watch them. The censors have made requests that seem arbitrary to outside observers. Violence is often acceptable, but certain types of language or visual gags get flagged for removal. This has led to some creative workarounds by the writing team. They've developed a sort of code for getting controversial material past the censors. Sometimes they'll include an extremely offensive joke that they know will be rejected, making their actually intended joke seem mild by comparison. It's a psychological negotiation tactic that has become part of their standard writing process. Here's something that sounds like trivia, but actually reveals something profound about how the show is made. The writer's room keeps a collection of rejected joke ideas that they call the too weird pile. These aren't jokes that are too offensive or inappropriate, but rather concepts that are so strange or specific that they don't fit into any episode. Occasionally, they'll build an entire storyline around one of these orphaned ideas, which explains why some episodes feel like fever dreams that shouldn't work but somehow do. The show's approach to celebrity cameos is more strategic than it might appear. When famous people appear as themselves, they're usually playing exaggerated versions of their public personas rather than trying to seem likable or relatable. The writers deliberately lean into whatever characteristic or controversy that celebrity is known for, creating appearances that feel more like roasts than typical guest spots. This approach has occasionally caused problems when celebrities change their minds about how they want to be portrayed, leading to last-minute script changes or even canceled episodes. Family Guy's relationship with its own continuity is fascinatingly inconsistent. The writers will sometimes reference events from episodes that aired years earlier, demonstrating that they do pay attention to their own history. But they'll just as often completely ignore or contradict previously established facts about the characters or their world. This isn't laziness or poor planning, but rather a deliberate choice to prioritize individual episode quality over series-long consistency. The animation team has developed a visual shorthand for different types of scenes that regular viewers might not consciously notice but definitely feel. Flashback sequences use slightly different color palettes and animation techniques. Dream sequences have their own visual language. Even the way characters move changes depending on whether a scene is meant to be realistic or cartoonish within the show's already cartoonish world. Here's a production detail that reveals how much thought goes into seemingly throwaway moments. Background characters and crowd scenes aren't just randomly generated. The animators create specific individuals with their own implied backstories, even though these characters might only appear for a few seconds. They've developed a whole population of Quahog residents who appear in multiple episodes, creating an illusion of a lived-in community, even though most viewers would never consciously recognize these recurring background players. The show's musical numbers require a completely different production pipeline from regular episodes. They start with Seth MacFarlane or other musically inclined staff members creating rough recordings of the songs. Then professional arrangers develop full orchestrations. The voice actors record their vocals to these arrangements. Only after all the music is complete do the animators begin creating visuals to match. This process can take months for a single musical sequence, which explains why these segments often feel more polished and elaborate than the surrounding episode. Family Guy's approach to holiday episodes reveals something interesting about how the writers view their own show. They treat holiday specials as opportunities to experiment with different formats or storytelling techniques. Rather than simply plugging their characters into traditional holiday scenarios, Christmas episodes might be musicals, Halloween episodes might be horror parodies, and so on. This keeps the show from falling into the predictable patterns that plague many long-running series. The show's merchandise presents some unique challenges because of how the characters are designed. Peter Griffin's proportions don't translate well to three-dimensional objects, leading to action figures and toys that look subtly wrong. The merchandising team has had to develop modified character designs specifically for products, creating versions of the characters that maintain their essential appearance while being more practically manufacturable. Here's something that demonstrates the show's attention to detail in unexpected areas. The writers have created complete backstories for characters who have never appeared on screen. They know the names and personalities of Brian's parents, even though this information has never been relevant to any episode. They've developed detailed histories for minor recurring characters that extend far beyond anything that's ever been shown. This background work helps maintain consistency in how these characters behave, even when they're only making brief appearances. The show's relationship with its own spin-offs created some interesting continuity challenges. When the Cleveland show was in production, storylines had to be coordinated between writing teams to ensure that Cleveland's appearances on Family Guy didn't contradict what was happening on his own show. This led to some awkward scheduling situations where episodes had to be rewritten or delayed to maintain consistency across both series. Family Guy's approach to celebrity deaths has evolved over the years in response to changing cultural sensitivities. Early episodes would sometimes include jokes about recently deceased public figures, but the writers now generally avoid this territory. Unless enough time has passed for such references to feel like historical commentary rather than current events humor. This self-imposed guideline has prevented some potentially awkward situations where episodes would have aired shortly after unexpected celebrity deaths. The show's animators have developed specialized techniques for different types of scenes that regular viewers probably don't notice but contribute to the overall viewing experience. Fight scenes use different frame rates and animation principles than dialogue scenes. Fantasy sequences might employ completely different artistic styles. The animators treat each type of scene as requiring its own approach, making Family Guy more visually diverse than many people realize. Here's a fact that illustrates how deeply the show has embedded itself in popular culture. The writers receive hundreds of suggestions from fans every week, ranging from episode ideas to character suggestions to complaints about plot inconsistencies. While they can't use fan-submitted ideas for legal reasons, these communications help them understand how their audience perceives the show and what elements are most popular or problematic. The show's approach to social media and internet culture has changed dramatically over its run. Early episodes barely acknowledged the existence of the internet, while recent seasons treat social media and online culture as fundamental aspects of modern life. The writers have had to learn new forms of humor and reference that didn't exist when the show began, essentially evolving their comedy style to match changing technology and communication patterns. Family Guy's international versions present fascinating translation challenges. Jokes that rely on American cultural references or wordplay often can't be directly translated, leading to completely different jokes in dubbed versions. Some countries have created culturally specific versions of certain episodes, replacing American references with local equivalents. This has resulted in versions of Family Guy that are almost entirely different shows while maintaining the same basic characters and plot lines. The show's writers maintain detailed style guides that specify how each character speaks, what types of references they would make, and how they would react in different situations. These guides help maintain consistency across different writers and ensure that characters don't drift too far from their established personalities. Brian's dialogue, for example, follows specific patterns that reflect his pretentious intellectual aspirations, while Chris's speech patterns reflect his slower mental processing speed. Here's something that reveals the show's commitment to its own absurdist logic. The writers have created internal rules for how the show's universe works that they follow even when these rules are never explicitly stated. They know how long it takes to travel between different locations in Quahog, which characters know each other, and what each character's financial situation is like. This background consistency helps ground even the most ridiculous storylines in something resembling reality. The show's merchandise licensing deals have created some genuinely strange products over the years. There have been Family Guy-themed everything from breakfast cereals to car accessories to wedding decorations. The licensing team has to consider whether each potential product fits with the show's brand, leading to some philosophical discussions about what Family Guy represents as a cultural entity beyond just a television program. Family Guy's approach to controversial topics has become more sophisticated over the years, moving from simple shock value toward more nuanced satirical commentary. The writers now spend considerable time researching topics before writing about them, ensuring that their jokes come from a place of understanding rather than ignorance. This doesn't mean they avoid controversial subjects, but rather that they approach them with more intentionality. The show's animators have developed a visual signature that makes Family Guy immediately recognizable, even in brief clips or promotional materials. This involves not just character design but also choices about color palettes, camera angles, and motion principles. New animators joining the team have to learn these specific techniques to ensure visual consistency across different episodes and seasons. Here's a production detail that most viewers would never think about, but significantly impacts the viewing experience. The show's sound design team creates distinct audio signatures for different characters and locations. Peter's footsteps sound different from Brian's. The Griffin house has its own acoustic characteristics, and even the way doors close varies depending on the context. These subtle audio cues help create the illusion of a consistent physical world, even though everything is animated. As you drift off to sleep tonight, remember that somewhere in the world, animators are drawing the next batch of Family Guy episodes, voice actors are recording dialogue for situations that don't exist, and writers are debating whether jokes about topics you've never considered are funny enough to include in a television show. The machinery of entertainment continues turning even while you rest, creating the content that will occupy your mind during tomorrow night's journey toward sleep. Sweet dreams. And remember that in the grand scheme of things, we're all just characters in someone else's animated universe, trying to make sense of the absurd situations we find ourselves in. Picture this. You're lying in bed, scrolling through endless YouTube videos, desperately searching for something that will finally help your brain shut off. and drift into peaceful sleep. But here's the thing. What if I told you that one of the most chaotic, irreverent animated shows on television actually contains some of the most intricate, soothing lore that's perfect for bedtime listening? Tonight, we're diving deep into the surprisingly complex world of Family Guy, exploring the hidden depths, character backstories, and interconnected mysteries that will gently carry you off to dreamland. You might be wondering how a show known for its cutaway gags and crude humor could possibly be relaxing. But trust me, when you peel back the layers of chaos and focus on the underlying mythology, Family Guy reveals itself to be a masterpiece of world building that's been quietly developing for over 2 decades. So get comfortable, dim those lights, and let me take you on a journey through Quahog that you've never experienced before. Let's start with the Griffin family home itself, that iconic house at 31 Spooner Street. This isn't just any ordinary suburban dwelling. There is a character in its own right, with a history that stretches back generations. The house has witnessed countless adventures, housed multiple families, and even survived being completely destroyed and rebuilt. There's something deeply comforting about the consistency of this space. The way the living room layout never changes, how the kitchen remains a constant gathering place for the family's most important moments. The basement of the Griffin house holds particular significance in the show's lore. It's not just where Peter keeps his exercise equipment that he never uses. It's been a fallout shelter, a laboratory, a secret hideout, and even a portal to other dimensions in various episodes. The basement represents the hidden depths beneath the surface chaos of the Griffin family life, much like how this very video represents the hidden depths beneath Family Guy's surface comedy. Speaking of Peter Griffin, let's explore the surprisingly complex psychology of this seemingly simple character. Peter isn't just a bumbling father figure. He's a man with deep-seated insecurities, childhood trauma, and an almost childlike wonder about the world around him. His relationship with his father, Mickey McFinnigan, shaped his entire worldview. Growing up believing his father was dead, only to discover he was actually alive and working as a knight at medieval times, created a fundamental trust issue that manifests in Peter's often erratic behavior. Peter's various career changes throughout the series aren't just random plot devices, they represent his constant search for identity and purpose. From his time as a toy factory worker, to his stint as a fisherman, from his brief period as a country music star, to his role as a brewery owner, each job represents a different facet of Peter's personality trying to emerge. The fact that he always returns to the brewery suggests that, deep down, Peter understands that consistency and routine are what truly matter in life. The relationship between Peter and his wife Lois is built on a foundation that runs much deeper than surface-level attraction. Lois Pewterschmidt Griffin comes from incredible wealth and privilege, yet she chose to marry a blue-collar worker and embrace a middle-class lifestyle. This decision speaks to her character's core values. She prioritizes love, family, and authenticity over material comfort. Her occasional moments of frustration with Peter aren't signs of a failing marriage, but rather natural responses to the challenges of loving someone unconditionally. Lois's musical talents, her piano playing and singing abilities, represent her artistic soul that she's never fully abandoned despite becoming a full-time mother and wife. These moments when she plays piano in the living room are some of the show's most genuinely peaceful scenes, offering viewers a glimpse into the quieter, more contemplative side of the Griffin household. The children of the Griffin family each represent different aspects of human development and potential. Meg, often the target of the family's jokes, is actually the most grounded and emotionally mature member of the household. Her struggles with popularity and self-acceptance mirror the universal teenage experience, but her resilience and ultimate self-worth make her a quietly heroic figure. The way she continues to care for her family despite their treatment of her speaks to an inner strength that's truly admirable. Chris Griffin embodies the awkward transition from childhood to adulthood, with all the confusion and wonder that entails. His artistic talents, his surprising moments of wisdom, and his generally kind nature suggest a bright future ahead. Despite his current social awkwardness, there's something deeply relatable about Chris's journey of self-discovery, his struggles with body image, and his earnest attempts to understand the adult world around him. Then there's Stewie Griffin, perhaps the most complex character in the entire Family Guy universe. Behind his megalomaniacal exterior lies a sophisticated intelligence grappling with existential questions that most adults never even consider. Stewie's time machine adventures aren't just science fiction comedy, they represent humanity's eternal desire to understand our place in the universe, to correct our mistakes, and to glimpse what lies ahead. The evolution of Stewie's character from would-be world conqueror to confused child genius to questioning young person represents one of television's most subtle and well-executed character developments. His relationship with Brian the dog serves as the emotional core of many episodes, showing how friendship can transcend species, age, and even sanity. Brian Griffin deserves special attention in any discussion of Family Guy lore. As the family dog who walks upright, speaks eloquently, and pursues intellectual interests, Brian represents the aspirational aspects of human nature. His struggles with alcoholism, his romantic failures, and his literary ambitions make him perhaps the most human character on the show, despite being a dog. Brian's backstory, including his time as a stray in Austin, Texas, and his eventual adoption by the Griffin family, speaks to themes of belonging and found family that resonate deeply with viewers. His college education, his liberal political views, and his artistic pretensions might make him seem pretentious, but they also represent the very human desire for self-improvement and intellectual growth. The recurring characters of Quahog create a rich tapestry of small-town life that feels both familiar and fantastical. Glenn Quagmire, the Griffin's neighbor, might seem like a one-dimensional character focused on his pilot career and romantic pursuits. But deeper examination reveals a man grappling with loneliness and searching for genuine connection. His antagonistic relationship with Brian stems from philosophical differences that reflect real-world political and social divisions. Cleveland Brown's friendship with Peter represents the kind of loyal, enduring male friendship that many viewers find deeply comforting. Despite moving away to star in his own show and eventually returning, Cleveland's bond with Peter remains unchanged, speaking to the timeless nature of true friendship. Their shared history, from high school through adulthood, creates a sense of continuity and stability in an otherwise chaotic world. Joe Swanson's story as a disabled police officer adds layers of representation and resilience to the show's universe. His determination to maintain his career and active lifestyle despite his paralysis, combined with his role as a devoted husband and father, makes him an inspiring figure. The friendship between Joe, Peter, Quagmire, and Cleveland represents different aspects of masculinity and how men can support each other through life's challenges. The town of Quahog itself has a rich history that's been revealed gradually throughout the series. From its founding by seemingly ordinary settlers to its hidden connections to major historical events, Quahog represents the idea that every small town has secrets and stories worth telling. The various businesses, from the Drunken Clam Bar to the Quahog Mini Mart, create a sense of place that feels lived in and authentic. The Drunken Clam, in particular, serves as a sanctuary for the male characters, a place where they can escape the responsibilities and pressures of adult life. The dim lighting, the familiar faces, and the comfortable routine of sharing drinks and conversation create an atmosphere that many viewers find deeply relaxing and nostalgic. Family Guy's approach to continuity is uniquely comforting for late-night viewing. While the show often resets situations and ignores consequences for comedic purposes, certain elements remain constant. Entity, the family's love for each other, their shared experiences, and the fundamental dynamics that define their relationships. This selective continuity creates a dreamlike quality where anything can happen, but the core emotional truths remain unchanged. The show's frequent flashbacks and cutaway gags, while often dismissed as random humor, actually serve to expand the universe's mythology. Each glimpse into a character's past, each reference to historical events, and each bizarre scenario adds another layer to the show's complex tapestry. These moments create a sense that the characters have rich, full lives beyond what we see in the main episodes. The musical elements of Family Guy deserve special recognition for their soothing qualities. From Lois's piano performances to the elaborate musical numbers that occasionally take over entire episodes, music serves as a unifying force in the Griffin household. These musical, Moments often reveal character, emotions, and relationships in ways that dialogue alone cannot, creating some of the series' most genuinely touching scenes. The show's treatment of holidays and traditions provides a comforting structure that mirrors real family life. Christmas episodes, Halloween specials, and birthday celebrations create anchor points throughout the series, giving viewers familiar touchstones that feel like returning home. The way the Griffin family celebrates these occasions, with all their chaos and love, reflects the messy reality of actual family gatherings. Peter's various schemes and adventures, while often absurd, follow certain patterns that create a sense of predictability within unpredictability. His enthusiasm for new projects, his inevitable complications, and his family's support, despite their exasperation, create a comfortable rhythm that's perfect for relaxation. There's something deeply satisfying about knowing that no matter how crazy Peter's latest idea gets, everything will work out in the end. The relationship between the Griffin family and their extended family members adds another layer of complexity to the show's lore. Lois's wealthy parents, the Pewterschmidts, represent old money and social expectations, while Peter's working-class background creates natural tensions that many viewers can relate to. These family dynamics play out over multiple episodes and seasons, creating long-term storylines that reward dedicated viewers. The show's occasional ventures into science fiction and fantasy elements expand the universe beyond the boundaries of realistic suburban life. Time travel episodes, alternate dimension stories, and encounters with supernatural beings suggest that the Family Guy universe operates on different rules than our own, where anything is possible, and wonder lurks around every corner. As we wind down our journey through Family Guy's hidden depths, it's worth reflecting on what makes this chaotic comedy so unexpectedly soothing when viewed through the lens of lore and continuity. Perhaps it's the underlying message that families, despite their flaws and conflicts, ultimately stick together. Maybe it's the comfort of familiar characters and settings that feel like old friends. Or possibly it's the show's ability to find humor and humanity in even the most absurd situations. The Griffin family, for all their dysfunction and chaos, represents something fundamentally hopeful about human nature. They make mistakes, they hurt each other's feelings, they get into ridiculous situations, but they always come back together. They forgive, they support each other, and they continue to grow and change as individuals while maintaining their core family bond. So as you close your eyes tonight, let your mind wander through the streets of Quahog, past the familiar houses and landmarks, into the warm glow of 31 Spooner Street, where a family gathers each evening, sharing meals, stories, and love, despite all their imperfections. In that comfortable, chaotic, deeply human space, perhaps you'll find the peace and rest you've been searching for. Sweet dreams. And remember, no matter how crazy life gets, there's always home, there's always family, and there's always tomorrow to try again. The lore of Family Guy reminds us that even in the most unlikely places, we can find stories worth telling, characters worth loving, and moments worth treasuring. Rest well, knowing that somewhere in the animated universe, the Griffin family continues their eternal dance of chaos and love, providing comfort to viewers around the world who find solace in their familiar dysfunction and unwavering devotion to each other. Have you ever wondered why Family Guy was actually canceled twice before becoming one of the most successful animated shows in television history? Or why Seth MacFarlane almost died in the September 11th attacks, but a twist of fate involving a hangover literally saved his life? Today we're diving deep into the hidden world of Family Guy lore that will completely change how you watch this iconic show. Most people think they know everything about the Griffin family, but the truth is, there are layers of secrets, controversies, and mind-blowing, behind-the-scenes stories that Fox never wanted you to discover. From voice actors who were replaced without anyone noticing, to episodes that were banned from ever airing again, we're about to uncover the most shocking Family Guy secrets that have been hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades. But first, let me blow your mind with something that happened before the show even premiered. Seth MacFarlane was supposed to be on American Airlines Flight 11 on September 11, 2001, the same flight that crashed into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. He had a ticket, his bags were packed, and he should have been on that plane. But here's the crazy part that nobody talks about. He overslept because he was hungover from a party the night before. That hangover literally saved his life and changed the entire trajectory of television comedy. Think about it for a second. If MacFarlane had made that flight, there would be no Family Guy, no American Dad, no The Orville, no billion-dollar animation empire. One night of partying in 2001 accidentally preserved one of the most influential creators in modern entertainment. But that's just the beginning of how strange and interconnected the Family Guy universe really gets. Let's start with something that will mess with your head every time you watch the show from now on. Mila Kunis, the voice of Meg Griffin, was only 14 years old when she started voicing the character. 14. She literally grew up recording in that booth, and her voice changing during puberty became part of Meg's character development. But here's the part that's even more insane. She lied about her age to get the job. When Kunis auditioned, she told the casting directors she was 18. She figured by the time they found out the truth, she'd already be established in the role. Her gamble paid off, but it created a bizarre situation where a teenage girl was voicing sexual jokes in adult situations that she wasn't even old enough to fully understand. The writers had to be careful about what lines they gave Meg because they had a minor in the recording booth. Speaking of voice acting mysteries, here's something that will make you question everything you think you know about the show's consistency. Phyllis Diller, the legendary comedian, was originally supposed to be the voice of Peter's mother, Thelma Griffin. She recorded several episodes worth of dialogue before the creators decided to kill off the character and replace her with Alex Borstein voicing Peter's new mother-in-law, Barbara Puderschmidt. But the weirdest part isn't that they changed voice actors, it's that they kept some of Phyllis Diller's recorded lines and mixed them with Alex Borstein's voice work in certain episodes. If you listen carefully to some of the early season episodes, you can actually hear the subtle differences in vocal tone and delivery that reveal this hidden voice actor swap that most fans never noticed. Now let's talk about the episode that almost destroyed Family Guy before it even became successful. The episode called When You Wish Upon a Weinstein was considered so controversial that it was pulled from Fox's lineup and didn't air until years later on Cartoon Network. The episode dealt with Peter wanting his family to convert to Judaism because he believed Jewish people were naturally good with money. The controversy wasn't just about the content, it was about the timing. This episode was supposed to air just months after the September 11th attacks, when religious tensions were at an all-time high. Fox executives were terrified that the episode would spark protests, boycotts, and potentially violent reactions. They locked the episode away and pretended it didn't exist for nearly 3 years. But here's what makes this story even more complex. Seth MacFarlane fought tooth and nail to get the episode aired because he believed it was actually pro-Jewish and was celebrating Jewish culture rather than mocking it. He felt that Fox was being cowardly and missing the point of the satire entirely. The battle over this one episode created a rift between MacFarlane and Fox executives that influenced how the show was handled for years afterward. This brings us to one of the most shocking secrets in Family Guy history. The show was actually canceled twice, and both times it came back from the dead through pure accident. The first cancellation happened after season 2, because Fox executives thought the show was too expensive to produce and wasn't attracting the right demographic. They wanted younger viewers, but Family Guy was primarily watched by college students and adults. Here's where it gets interesting. After the cancellation, Cartoon Network picked up the reruns and started airing them late at night. The show found its audience in this late-night slot, with viewers who were exactly the demographic Fox had been trying to reach. College students would come home from parties and watch Family Guy marathons until sunrise. The show became a cultural phenomenon through syndication, something that had never happened before with an animated series. The DVD sales were equally shocking. The first season DVD became one of the best-selling television DVDs of all time, outselling many major Hollywood movies. Fox executives couldn't ignore the numbers anymore. They had accidentally created a gold mine and then thrown it away. The revival of Family Guy after its first cancellation changed how television networks think about syndication and DVD sales forever. But the second cancellation is even more bizarre. After bringing the show back, Fox canceled it again after season 4, because they claimed it wasn't performing well in its Sunday night time slot. What they didn't tell anyone was that they were deliberately sabotaging the show by moving it around the schedule constantly. Some episodes aired on different nights without any promotion, making it nearly impossible for fans to keep track of when new episodes were airing. Seth MacFarlane was so frustrated with Fox's treatment of the show that he seriously considered moving Family Guy to a different network entirely. Comedy Central and Cartoon Network both made offers to pick up the series, which would have been unprecedented at the time. The idea of a major animated series switching networks mid-run had never happened before. What saved Family Guy the second time wasn't fan campaigns or DVD sales. It was the iTunes revolution. When Family Guy episodes became available for digital purchase, they consistently ranked as some of the most downloaded television content. Fox suddenly realized they had a digital goldmine on their hands and brought the show back for a third time. Now let's dive into some character secrets that will change how you see the Griffin family forever. Brian Griffin, the talking dog, was originally supposed to be much more of a background character. Seth MacFarlane voices Brian himself, and the character was initially just meant to provide occasional witty commentary. But MacFarlane found that Brian's voice came so naturally to him that he started writing more and more scenes for the character. Here's the mind-bending part. Brian Griffin is essentially Seth MacFarlane's alter ego. Almost every political opinion, cultural reference, and intellectual observation that comes out of Brian's mouth reflects MacFarlane's actual views. When Brian goes on rants about politics, religion, or social issues, you're literally hearing Seth MacFarlane's personal opinions filtered through a cartoon dog character. This became controversial when fans started to notice that Brian was becoming increasingly preachy and self-righteous in later seasons. Critics accused MacFarlane of using the character as a mouthpiece for his liberal political views, turning Family Guy into a platform for his personal agenda. The backlash became so intense that MacFarlane actually killed off Brian in a shocking episode, only to bring him back a few episodes later after massive fan outrage. But the Brian death episode reveals something even more interesting about how Family Guy operates behind the scenes. The writers had been planning Brian's temporary death for over a year, and they deliberately leaked fake spoilers to throw fans off the scent. They created elaborate fake scripts and even recorded fake voice acting sessions to maintain the secrecy of their plan. Stewie Griffin presents another layer of hidden complexity that most viewers completely miss. The character was originally designed to be a one-dimensional villain baby who wanted to kill his mother and take over the world. But as the show evolved, Stewie became more complex, and his sexuality became a subject of constant speculation and debate. Seth MacFarlane has given contradictory statements about Stewie's sexual orientation over the years, sometimes saying the character is gay, sometimes saying he's too young for sexuality to matter, and sometimes saying it's deliberately ambiguous. But here's what most people don't know. There are actually two different versions of Stewie, depending on who he's interacting with. When Stewie talks to Brian, he's portrayed as intelligent, sophisticated, and possibly gay. When he interacts with his family members, he's more like a regular baby with occasional moments of evil genius behavior. This isn't accidental. It's a deliberate, creative choice that reflects how different people see us differently in various relationships and contexts. The Stewie and Brian dynamic became so popular that entire episodes started focusing exclusively on their adventures together. These episodes, often called road trip episodes by fans, consistently rank among the most popular Family Guy episodes of all time. The chemistry between Seth MacFarlane's two most personal character voices created some of the show's most memorable moments. Let's talk about the celebrity guest stars and the shocking stories behind their appearances. When Drew Barrymore appeared on the show, she was going through a particularly difficult period in her personal life. The recording session was supposed to take 2 hours, but she stayed for 6 hours because she was having so much fun with the cast and crew. She later said that working on Family Guy was therapeutic during a time when she was struggling with addiction issues. But the most surprising celebrity appearance almost never happened. Patrick Stewart, who voices Susie Swanson, initially turned down the role because he thought the show was too crude and beneath his classical theater background. It was only after his agent convinced him to watch several episodes that he realized the show's intelligence hidden beneath its seemingly juvenile humor. Stewart became so invested in the character that he started suggesting storylines and character developments for Susie. He even offered to voice additional characters for free because he enjoyed the creative process so much. His enthusiasm for the show shocked many of his colleagues in classical theater who couldn't understand why a Shakespearean actor would want to be associated with Family Guy. The show's relationship with censorship creates another layer of hidden stories that most fans never hear about. There's an entire archive of Family Guy jokes, scenes, and episodes that were deemed too controversial to ever air. Some of these involve real celebrities who threatened legal action, while others were considered too offensive even for Family Guy's notoriously boundary-pushing standards. One particular episode that was completely scrapped dealt with Lois having an affair with a character based on a real-life politician. The episode was fully animated and voice-recorded before Fox executives realized the potential legal and political ramifications. The entire episode was locked away and will likely never see the light of day. But perhaps the most fascinating aspect of Family Guy lore involves the show's influence on other animated series. South Park creators Trey Parker and Matt Stone have had a long-running feud with Seth MacFarlane, claiming that Family Guy relies too heavily on random pop culture references instead of actual jokes. This feud played out in several South Park episodes that directly mocked Family Guy's writing style. The rivalry became so intense that it actually influenced how both shows developed their comedy. Family Guy started incorporating more story-driven humor to counter South Park's criticism, while South Park began using more visual gags and pop culture references to prove they could do Family Guy's style better than Family Guy itself. Here's something that will completely change how you watch Family Guy cutaway gags from now on. Those random flashback scenes that seem completely disconnected from the main plot? Many of them are actually recycled jokes from Seth MacFarlane's college animation projects and failed pilot episodes. The writers have been mining MacFarlane's old material for decades, updating and reworking jokes that were originally created in the 1,990 seconds. Some of the most popular Family Guy moments are actually 20-year-old jokes that have been given new animation and context. The peanut butter jelly time sequence, one of the show's most famous moments, was based on an internet meme that MacFarlane had been wanting to incorporate into his work for years before Family Guy even existed. As Family Guy approaches its 25th season, these hidden stories and secret histories continue to shape how the show develops. Seth MacFarlane has hinted that there are major revelations about the Griffin family that haven't been revealed yet, suggesting that even longtime fans don't know everything about these characters they've been watching for decades. The show that started as a simple animated sitcom has become a complex web of cultural commentary, personal expression, and industry politics that extends far beyond what appears on screen. Every episode carries the weight of canceled seasons, industry battles, and creative compromises that most viewers never suspect. Understanding this hidden lore doesn't just make Family Guy more interesting. It reveals how the entire landscape of adult animation has been shaped by the accidents, controversies, and creative battles that brought the Griffin family to life and kept them alive against all odds. Have you ever wondered why a cartoon dog can talk but nobody questions it? Or why a baby genius plots world domination while his parents argue about mundane household problems? Family Guy might seem like random chaos on the surface, but buried beneath all those cutaway gags and pop culture references lies a surprisingly deep well of hidden lore that most fans have never discovered. Today we're diving into the secret backstories, deleted scenes, and creator revelations that completely change how you see the Griffin family forever. Before we start unraveling these mysteries, let me ask you something. How many times have you watched Family Guy and thought you caught every single joke? Well, prepare to have your mind blown, because what I'm about to share will make you want to rewatch every episode with completely fresh eyes. From the real reason Stewie's head is shaped the way it is, to the dark truth about why Brian walks on two legs, these aren't just fun facts. These are game-changing revelations that Seth MacFarlane and his team have been hiding in plain sight for over 2 decades. Let's start with something that'll make you question everything you thought you knew about the show's most iconic character. Stewie Griffin isn't just some random genius baby who happens to speak with a British accent. According to early production notes that surfaced years later, Seth MacFarlane originally conceived Stewie as having a specific psychological condition that explains both his advanced intelligence and his distinctive way of speaking. The creators deliberately designed his football-shaped head as a visual metaphor for the pressure building inside his developing brain, representing the conflict between his infant body and his mature mind. But here's where it gets really interesting. MacFarlane revealed in a rarely seen interview that Stewie's British accent isn't actually British at all. It's what's called a mid-Atlantic accent, the same affected speech pattern used by wealthy Americans in the early 20th century to sound more sophisticated. This detail wasn't chosen randomly. The creators wanted to show that even as a baby, Stewie is already performing a version of himself, putting on airs to match his intellectual superiority complex. Now, you might be thinking this is just creative interpretation, but wait until you hear about the episodes that never made it to air. There was an entire storyline planned for Season 3 that would have revealed Stewie's accent comes from his obsession with old Hollywood films that he watches late at night when the family is sleeping. The episode would have shown him mimicking Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn movies, explaining both his sophisticated vocabulary and his theatrical mannerisms. This backstory was ultimately scrapped because the writers felt it made Stewie too sympathetic and would have undermined his role as the show's primary antagonist. Speaking of characters with hidden depths, let's talk about Brian Griffin. Most people assume he's just a talking dog who drinks martinis and considers himself an intellectual. But the real lore behind Brian is much darker than you might expect. In the show's original pitch Bible, Brian wasn't always an anthropomorphic character. He started as a regular dog who gained human-like intelligence through a laboratory experiment gone wrong. This origin story was briefly referenced in early episodes through subtle visual cues that most viewers missed entirely. Remember how Brian occasionally displays knowledge about topics that would be impossible for a regular dog to understand? That's not just for comedic effect. The writers planted clues throughout the series, suggesting that Brian retains fragmented memories from his time as a test subject. His alcoholism isn't just a character quirk for adult humor. It's actually his way of coping with the psychological trauma of having his consciousness artificially altered. The constant drinking helps suppress the disturbing memories of his transformation, which is why he becomes increasingly anxious and neurotic when he's sober for extended periods. This connects to another piece of hidden lore that completely reframes Brian's relationship with the Griffin family. In deleted scenes from the pilot episode, there was supposed to be a moment where Brian accidentally reveals that he remembers being adopted by the Griffins, not born into the family. The implication was that Peter rescued Brian from the laboratory, not knowing about the experiments that had been performed on him. This would explain why Peter treats Brian more like an equal than a pet, and why the rest of the family accepts his human-like behavior without question. But the Brian revelations don't stop there. MacFarlane once mentioned in a commentary track that Brian's literary aspirations aren't just pretentious posturing. They're actually his subconscious attempt to document his experiences and process his trauma through fiction. All those terrible novels he writes are supposedly coded accounts of his memories from before the experiments. The reason his writing is so bad isn't because he lacks talent. It's because he's trying to express experiences that his brain can't properly access or understand. Now let's shift gears and talk about Peter Griffin, because there's lore surrounding him that's been hiding in plain sight for years. You know how Peter has all these random jobs throughout the series and somehow always ends up in bizarre situations that no normal person would survive? There's actually a consistent explanation for this that the writers have been building since Season 1. Peter isn't just lucky or cartoonishly resilient. According to production notes, he's supposed to represent the concept of the American dream taken to its most absurd extreme. Every job change, every wild adventure, every impossible survival is meant to show how someone with absolutely no qualifications or common sense can still stumble into success in America if they have enough confidence and persistence. But here's the twist that most fans miss. Peter's apparent stupidity isn't natural. It's a learned behavior that he developed as a defense mechanism against the crushing reality of adult responsibility. This theory is supported by episodes where Peter demonstrates surprising competence in specific situations, usually when his family is genuinely threatened. The writers intentionally show glimpses of a more capable Peter to suggest that his buffoonery is partially an act. He plays dumb because it allows him to avoid dealing with complex emotional situations and lets him shirk responsibility for his actions. It's actually a fairly sophisticated psychological portrait disguised as slapstick comedy. The most mind-blowing piece of Peter lore involves his relationship with his father, Francis. In cutscenes from several episodes, there were supposed to be flashbacks showing that Peter's fear of authority and his rebellious nature stem from having an abusive father who constantly belittled his intelligence. Peter's current behavior is his way of rebelling against Francis even after his death, choosing to embrace stupidity as a form of posthumous defiance. This adds a tragic dimension to Peter's character that completely changes how you interpret his most outrageous moments. Let's move on to Lois, because her hidden backstory might be the most shocking of all. Most viewers see Lois as the long-suffering wife who somehow puts up with Peter's antics while trying to hold the family together. But there's lore suggesting that Lois is actually the most psychologically complex character in the entire show. Her wealthy background isn't just a plot device for occasional storylines about her family's money. It's the key to understanding her entire personality and motivation structure. According to early character development documents, Lois deliberately chose to marry Peter precisely because he was the opposite of everything her upper-class family expected from her. Her attraction to Peter wasn't romantic love in the traditional sense. It was her way of rebelling against the suffocating expectations of her privileged upbringing. This explains why she stays with Peter despite his obvious flaws and why she occasionally enables his worst behavior instead of putting her foot down. But here's where it gets really interesting. Lois's musical talents and her occasional displays of impressive competence aren't random character traits. They're remnants of the extensive education and training she received growing up in a wealthy family. The piano playing, the singing, the moments where she demonstrates sophisticated knowledge about art or culture, these are all parts of her original identity that she's trying to suppress in favor of her chosen role as a middle-class housewife. There was supposed to be an entire episode arc exploring Lois's internal conflict between her natural capabilities and her chosen lifestyle. The storyline would have revealed that she sometimes resents Peter not because he's difficult to live with, but because staying with him requires her to constantly diminish herself to avoid making him feel inadequate. This dynamic would have added incredible depth to their relationship and explained why their marriage has such a volatile quality. The Lois lore gets even deeper when you consider her relationship with her children. Her overprotectiveness of Meg isn't just maternal instinct. It's actually Lois projecting her own fears about conformity and social acceptance onto her daughter. Lois sees Meg struggling with the same issues she faced growing up, trying to fit in while dealing with family dynamics that set her apart from her peers. The reason Lois sometimes fails to defend Meg effectively is because she's reliving her own teenage trauma through her daughter's experiences. Now we need to talk about Meg, because there's lore surrounding her character that's both heartbreaking and brilliant. Everyone knows that Meg serves as the family scapegoat, constantly bullied and ignored by everyone around her. But according to Seth MacFarlane's original vision, Meg's role in the family isn't accidental. She's deliberately positioned as the emotional lightning rod that keeps the rest of the family functional. In early scripts, there were scenes showing that Meg is actually aware of her role as the family punching bag and has made a conscious decision to accept it because she understands that her family needs someone to blame for their problems. This makes Meg arguably the most mature and self-sacrificing member of the Griffin family, which completely reframes every joke made at her expense. The writers planted subtle clues throughout the series, suggesting that Meg has incredible inner strength and resilience that she hides from everyone around her. Her moments of competence and insight are deliberately rare because she's learned that showing her true capabilities threatens the family's emotional equilibrium. When Meg does stand up for herself, it usually creates chaos that ultimately gets resolved by her returning to her scapegoat role. There's also lore suggesting that Meg's unpopularity at school isn't entirely natural. Some episodes hint that she's unconsciously sabotaging her own social relationships because she's terrified of abandoning her family role. If Meg became popular and confident, she'd have to confront the fact that her family's treatment of her is abusive rather than merely unfortunate. It's easier for her to believe that she deserves the treatment she receives than to acknowledge that her family is fundamentally dysfunctional. The most devastating piece of Meg lore comes from deleted scenes, showing her keeping a secret journal where she documents all the cruel things her family says and does to her. But instead of expressing anger or hurt, the journal entries show Meg trying to understand and justify their behavior, constantly blaming herself for not being good enough to earn their love and respect. This transforms Meg from a simple comedy target into a genuinely tragic character whose story reflects real issues about family scapegoating and emotional abuse. Let's talk about some of the broader lore that affects the entire show's universe. Family Guy takes place in a world where cartoon logic applies, but there are consistent rules governing how that logic works. The cutaway gags aren't just random non sequiturs. They're actually windows into alternate realities or parallel dimensions that exist alongside the main Family Guy universe. This explains why the characters in cutaways sometimes have different personalities, or why historical events play out differently than in real life. Seth MacFarlane confirmed in interviews that he conceived the cutaway structure as a way to explore infinite possibilities within the show's framework. Each cutaway represents a potential timeline or alternative version of reality where different choices led to different outcomes. This means that every absurd scenario we see in a cutaway is actually happening somewhere in the broader Family Guy multiverse. This multiverse concept also explains some of the show's apparent continuity errors. When characters die and then reappear later, or when major events get reset without explanation, it's not sloppy writing. It's the show jumping between different dimensional versions of the Griffin family. The Brian death and resurrection storyline was actually a deliberate exploration of this concept, showing viewers what happens when the timeline gets significantly altered. There's also lore about Quahog itself that most viewers never notice. The town isn't just a generic setting for the Griffin family's adventures. It's specifically designed to represent a kind of American purgatory where nothing ever really changes or progresses. The residents of Quahog are stuck in perpetual cycles of the same mistakes and conflicts, which is why the characters can experience dramatic growth in one episode only, to return to their baseline personalities by the next episode. The writers have hidden references throughout the series, suggesting that Quahog exists in a temporal bubble where time moves differently than in the outside world. This explains why the characters never seem to age significantly, and why technological advancement happens inconsistently. It's not that the show ignores the passage of time. It's that Quahog itself is resistant to change, trapping its residents in an eternal present where growth and development are always temporary. As we wrap up this deep dive into Family Guy's hidden lore, it's worth noting that much of this information comes from sources that aren't widely available to casual fans. Production notes, deleted scenes, creator interviews, and behind-the-scenes materials reveal a level of thought and planning that's far more sophisticated than the show's reputation might suggest. Seth MacFarlane and his team have created a rich mythology that operates beneath the surface of what appears to be simple shock humor. The next time you watch Family Guy, pay attention to the details we've discussed today. Look for the subtle clues about character motivations, the hints about hidden backstories, and the consistent internal logic that governs even the most absurd situations. You'll discover that this apparently chaotic comedy actually follows carefully constructed rules that make every character more complex and interesting than they initially appear. What's most impressive about Family Guy's hidden lore is how it enhances rather than contradicts the show's comedic elements. Understanding Stewie's psychological complexity makes his schemes funnier, not less funny. Knowing about Brian's tragic backstory adds depth to his pretentious behavior without undermining the humor. Recognizing Meg's secret strength makes her mistreatment more poignant while still allowing the jokes to land. This is the mark of truly sophisticated comedy writing. The best humor comes from characters who feel real and situations that feel authentic, even when they're completely absurd. By building detailed backstories and consistent internal logic, The Family Guy writers created a foundation that supports both genuine emotional moments and outrageous comedic scenarios. So there you have it, the secret lore of Family Guy that changes everything about how you understand the show. From Stewie's artificial accent to Brian's laboratory origins. From Peter's defensive stupidity to Lois's suppressed identity. From Meg's conscious martyrdom to Quahog's temporal peculiarities. These hidden elements transform a seemingly simple cartoon into something much richer and more complex. Which of these revelations surprised you the most? Are there other aspects of Family Guy lore that you think deserve more attention? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden secrets of your favorite shows.